Hello, and thank you for joining us on another episode of The Stir. We are here to show you how easy it is to entertain yourself at home as we all weather this storm. Joining me, as always, is my binge bestie, Debbie Baldwin, who is an author, entertainment columnist, and sitcom creator and producer. Hey, Debbie.
Hey, Trish.
So today we're combining two things we love and can talk about nonstop: flicks and food, as we reveal Debbie's top movies about food. And if you know Debbie, you know the list is long. So we're gonna get
and those have to be the two biggest things that everyone is doing.
I know,
exactly. Situation is eating and watching movies. So
you can't help but be consumed by it. So we've got a nice, fun-packed, food-filled list for you. And the very first one, right off the bat, Big Night from 1996. Ciao.
Now, when you talk about movies about food, it's kind of that debate, is a hot dog a sandwich? People are always debating whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie, for example. Now, I think that movies about food should really be about food, because there's plenty of films that have food in the title, or, you have a casual food, like a dinner scene, that aren't really about food. Big Night, which stars Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub, is 100% a fantastic movie about food.
Love that movie.
They play two Italian brothers, Primo and Secondo, who have immigrated from Italy and opened a restaurant in New Jersey featuring the traditional cuisine of their hometown. And it's the whole movie is this build up, this rival who one of the men is having an affair with his wife. So this rival restaurant owner has an axe to grind and who
is just across the street.
The brothers have been told by this rival that the famous jazz singer Louis Prima is going to come to their restaurant for a meal. So the men spend every penny they have and work night and day to create this fabulous meal. And no spoilers in this. It's just about this preparation and this big expectation that they're going to save their restaurant with, a food critic who's coming, or a reporter who's coming to cover the singers,
photographers. They had everybody expected for dinner, of course, in anticipation that Louis Prima, of course, was going to be the guest of honor.
Right.
But my God, you're right. The whole preparation for it just builds up the anticipation for this entire feast. And of course, who could forget about that timpano?
I mean, everything. It's just amazing. And the supporting cast.
You've got Minnie Driver, Allison Janney, Isabella Rossellini,
Ian Holm, Liev Schreiber. I mean, it's every actor in that film is worth watching on their own. And actually, I was thinking when I was watching it, Trish, that we could have included Allison Janney in a binge, in an actor we want to binge, because she's been in so many movies.
And lots of fun movies at that. Yeah, you're right.
Amazing.
You're right.
Yeah. It's just a great film, and it's a great film about food.
And, a little bit of trivia about that film, the rival restaurant, Pascal's, that we're talking about, which is across the street from the Brothers restaurant. In the opening scene, there's a lounge singer on stage. And that singer is actually Stanley Tucci's sister, Christine. And as you know, Stanley Tucci wrote and directed this movie. And apparently he did it because he wanted a really decent part for him.
Well, that's one way to do it. Write your own role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And talent like Stanley Tucci, who can write and direct and act.
And apparently can cook. I mean, this recipe for the masterpiece, the timpano, is his recipe, and it includes his recipe for the ragu sauce. The timpano is like this encrusted
pasta, yeah,
Pasta, salami, meatballs, cheese, lots
eggs.
of
I
cheese.
mean, it's
Oh my
visually
goodness.
when they slice into it at the table is one of the coolest things. It's just, and the acting is so good. You know, there's
It's
no
so
like
good. And
eye
those
rolling,
two,
burning. It's just
Stanley and Tony playing off each other. Oh my God.
yes. I mean,
So
amazing.
sweet and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the final scene of that movie, and we're not, spoiling anything, but it's probably one of my favorite final scenes of a movie. It's
Yeah.
just so nice.
Yeah, I agree. It's so simple and yet so moving, you know?
So moving right along, we've got 2015 film next, and it's Burnt, starring Bradley Cooper.
Burnt is a movie that kind of flew under the radar. Bradley Cooper plays a very self-involved, temperamental chef who is battling addiction and loses his job at a Michelin star restaurant. And is just struggles. He goes to New Orleans and kind of tries to get his act together, and then he returns to Europe to try and regain his reputation. And it's just between the cooking, which is done I mean, every little dish in this film is like a work of art. So visually, it's so interesting to watch. And then on top of that, it's a really good story about Bradley Cooper's character, just a sort of almost a coming of age story about this maturing and figuring out about how to reconcile his artistic genius with working in, with humans, like
Right,
getting
right.
along with people and just figuring out how to be sober and communicative while still maintaining that kind of level of kind of crazy artistry. And it's a romantic movie. He has a romance with the sous chef who's played by Sienna Miller. The supporting cast here is amazing. Emma Thompson plays his therapist. Uma Thurman plays a restaurant critic. Alicia Vikander is in it, who got a lot of renowned for her film for the film she was in maybe 5 years ago, Ex Machina,
Yes.
which was nominated for an Oscar. And so, yeah, very strong cast, ensemble cast, and Bradley Cooper is fantastic in this movie. I mean, he's such a
So
good
I'm
actor.
thinking he's convincing as a chef, because this too flew under my radar.
Yes, very. I mean, I have to say, like, it's one of those, we joke about, his good looks held him back. Obviously, nothing held him back. He's a
Right.
huge star. But, yeah, he's so believable in this role. It's really fun to watch.
All right, so that was Burnt from 2015. And we're going to stay in Europe for our next film, fun film,
Stay in Europe for a lot.
Ratatouille from 2007 already, Debbie. I mean, this film was that year's best animated feature among other accolades. The story of Remy.
Remy the rat who wants to be a chef. And I mean, it's just one of the best animated films. I think that technologically, that must have been a real breakthrough year, because I can remember sitting in the theater and just thinking visually. I mean, obviously
Exactly.
having.
Exactly. I mean, I don't even know if they call it cinematography when it's an animated feature,
Yeah.
but all the things that you see, you're right about the visual stuff.
Yeah, how they can. I mean, obviously having food to animate is like a windfall for an animator because it's so beautiful anyway. But every little thing about this movie, his little adventure, it's classic, just great children's animation. If you need a movie for your kids and that you've been through, Little Mermaid and Lion King and all the standard ones, Ratatouille is one not to forget.
Exactly. And, adults enjoy it too. And speaking of another movie like that, we go way back to 1997, another kid-centric movie, but I enjoyed it when I watched it. is Good Burger.
Burger.
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. May I take your order, Debbie Baldwin?
Good Burger is, I mean, it's so funny for kids in that age group. Kenan Thompson, who has gone on to huge success with Saturday Night Live. I think he's the longest running
The
cast
longest,
member.
exactly. And also Kel Mitchell, his co-star.
And Kenan and Kel.
Yes, from Nickelodeon. And this movie started off as a Nickelodeon show.
Yes. And so his character, Kenan Thompson's character, wrecks his mother's car. And he has to get a summer job to pay to repair the damages. And it's just, he forms this friendship with this kind of goofy cashier at this fast food restaurant, and they battle the bad guy from the massive burger chain, and
from across the street once again.
Right across and that there's more of those coming too.
I know, exactly.
And then with just some great great scenes of dancing and fun, and
don't forget about Sinbad.
Well, and I was going to say, and Shaq, because when Shaquille O'Neal's size 22 feet step in front of the screen, I pay attention, whether it's on ESPN or on a Nickelodeon.
Oh, well, see, there you go. Yeah, that was so fun to see, and also we have Abe Vigoda as part of the cast.
I mean, fantastic. Seriously, I mean, he's fantastic to watch. Yeah, that's so it's a fun movie if you've got kids, and that's such a hard age to find a movie for a kid that's edgy enough that 12 to 16.
Sure.
Is edgy enough that they'll be interested in it. They're beyond kind of animation, but you're not ready for them to be watching R-rated movies or whatever. This Good Burger is a good choice. It's funny, it's gross, it's right. It's just right in the wheelhouse of that age group.
I completely agree. So our next movie is a 2000 film starring Penelope Cruz, which is Woman on Top. Debbie, I have not seen this movie.
Now this movie, I loved it. It's Penelope Cruz plays a wife in Brazil, and she is first of all, the most important thing to know about the movie is that her character has this terrible motion sickness, and she cannot do anything. She has to drive the car. She can't ride in a car. She has to take stairs. She can't take the elevator. She has to be in the bedroom, the woman on top, as the title would suggest.
Got it. Okay.
So it creates friction in her marriage. And the husband ends up having an affair. He manages the restaurant where she is a very talented chef. And she is talented because as a child, it was the only thing she could do that didn't make her vertigo kick in.
Got it. Okay.
So she flees with her transsexual friend, Margot, I think the character's name is, and who is played by Harold Perrineau Jr., who you might know from The Matrix. He was Link in The Matrix.
Okay, the name sounded familiar. Okay, got it.
He was also in Lost, the TV show Lost. She ends up getting this job on a San Francisco, a local cooking show she starts. And then the Brazilian husband comes from Brazil to try and win her back. And the show's producer, who you'll know him from Royal Pains. I'm blanking on his name right now, but anyway, so it's all this romantic ruckus as these men are kind of wooing her for her affection, and she, then the network wants to take the show national, but she doesn't want to compromise her friendships and her integrity, and so it's just kind of a cute story, and it's very charming, and obviously Penelope Cruz is so talented and beautiful.
Yes.
And so, and again, and it's about food. It's really cool to watch her cook and make the dishes. And this one's Brazilian instead of European.
So this is actually we're spotlighting Brazilian cuisine in this movie, I would think.
Yes.
Okay, wow. Yummy. All right, so next one I'm also unfamiliar with. My God, I don't know how I missed all these movies about food. Is Dinner Rush from the year 2000 with the late great Danny Aiello.
And now this movie, I would say, is less really about food, truth be told. But I did read great little comparison to this movie. They called it Big Night, which we've already talked about, meets The Sopranos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's if not in real time, it takes place in the course of one evening. And Danny Aiello owns a restaurant in New Jersey. You can hear the Sopranos music kind of running in your head, and has these rumored affiliations with organized crime. And then you've got his sous chef who owes a big gambling debt. And then you've got these customers coming in for this very, in this very hectic, bustling restaurant, and then a mobster who's trying to kill somebody, and then the police who are spying on whatever the goings on are at the restaurant. So it's very funny. It's very chaotic.
It sounds like my cup of tea. Yeah. I'm loving the plot line here.
And it's got that real kind of old school vibe to it. It's it's a very, very entertaining film.
And so moving on to our next film, one of my favorite directors from 1994 is Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And it was a Taiwanese movie directed by Ang Lee, which interestingly enough is his first movie that he's directed to be set in his native Taiwan.
It is, and it's actually considered to be part of a trilogy with two other films that star the same patriarchal male actor who's also Taiwanese. And the other two movies are not food, even though one of them is called The Wedding Banquet. They're not as food.
I've seen that, yeah.
As which, I mean, The Wedding Banquet is a great film. If
it is, it sure is.
Anyway, but it's a great film too. But anyway, this film, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, is about a very old school Taiwanese master chef with three daughters who are all very much more modern thinking women, and their romantic entanglements and their careers, and how this father kind of, I don't know, manages it all and tries to adapt to new ways.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
While sticking to tradition, and it's all sort of expressed through food too. I mean, that opening scene of that movie, do you remember this, Trish, when he's doing all that knife work? He gets the live fish out of the barrel.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just mesmerizing.
It is mesmerizing. I was thinking of that exact same word. Yeah, that was really a great movie. And again, Ang Lee, I love his work. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon,
Brokeback Mountain.
Brokeback Mountain, Life of Pi. It's just all visually so appealing. He's done some great, beautiful movies.
Yeah, and they and this in particular is his gift for that kind of almost making art out of every shot of his films is magical. And so when you've got such a great subject as this master chef, even just making a dumpling or boning a chicken, it's just beautiful to watch.
Exactly. So we are moving on to our next film from 1997, Soul Food, and what a cast it has.
I honestly, this film is one, I'm trying to think how, I want to say it kind of set the standard for the African American female ensemble cast. It's,
I could see that. You're right. Yeah.
Like Waiting to Exhale, and there were some others around that time period, but this one's a little later. But anyway, it's Vanessa Williams and Vivica Fox and Nia Long play sisters. And when the matriarch of the family, Big Mama, who really is, makes me think of all the subsequent comedies.
Exactly.
But this is the original Big Mama, I guess.
Yeah.
And she has complications from surgery to have her leg amputated. She's diabetic. And the family has to pick up the pieces and get there, without her strong leadership and advice and counsel. And one of the ways this family does it is by continuing their tradition of Sunday night dinners with soul food. And so this is, I would say, less a movie about food, but more a movie about how food is a vehicle for kind of maintaining the bonds that this family values so profoundly. And each character kind of uses that time at the family dinner to work through their own issues. And it's just a well-acted, very, very entertaining film. It's very funny. It's like just incredibly heartwarming.
And such a beautiful cast.
Yeah.
I just remember the movie posters when they came out. Such a stunning ensemble there. For our next movie, we've got, switching gears a little bit because we're going to talk about dessert, but Waitress from 2007 with Kerry Russell.
The woman who wrote the screenplay, Adrienne Shelley, was murdered right after the film was completed. She was murdered in her apartment in New York City. And it was this huge, the film had she didn't even get to hear that the film had been accepted into Sundance. And so it was with this kind of bittersweet,
Sure.
tinge that this movie achieved such amazing success. It was in limited release, and then it got picked up, and the film stars Kerry Russell and Cheryl Hines and the woman who penned the screenplay, and as three waitresses. And Kerry Russell's the main character. She's in a bad marriage.
Abusive marriage at that.
Abusive marriage, and she is a very talented pie maker. And so along the course of things, she suddenly realizes she's pregnant and has this just hilarious, awkward, charming relationship with her obstetrician, who's played by Nathan Fillion, if you're a fan of the TV show Castle. He was Castle on that show. And it's just her story about Kerry Russell's character story about breaking free and finding some independence and finding out the woman that she is. Andy Griffith has the most charming cameo, as he's fantastic to watch whenever he's on screen, but he's particularly just great in every scene he's in this movie. So,
and all that eye candy in that movie. And it's also important to note that Waitress has been turned into a Broadway musical, which I've seen when it came to the Fox Theater, and it's just as eye-popping. And I believe they were even distributing the pie scents around the theater. The aroma of
oh
pie.
Yeah, that's great.
as you were watching. So it's definitely hard to not think about pie and have your mouth water at the prospect of pie while watching the movie or watching the musical.
Definitely.
So our next movie is 2014's Chef, and I enjoyed watching this movie.
I have to say, when I saw Chef in the theater, I was not a huge fan because I felt like it takes them so long.
It was long.
To get in that darn truck that I was like, what? Enough. Like, I get it. Like, let's get on with the journey. But when I watched it again, I realized, stop. I keep thinking, oh, it's a movie about a food truck. It's a movie about a food truck. But if you think it's a movie about a food truck, you will kind of be like, move it along. But it's really so much more than that. And Jon Favreau is really one of my favorite actors and one of my favorite directors. With Sofia Vergara from Modern Family, and a great cast that includes Dustin Hoffman and Oliver Platt. And it's a story about Jon Favreau, who's a kind of cutting edge chef, and he gets into it with the owner of the restaurant where he works, who's played by Dustin Hoffman. And they get in a big knockdown drag out, and he decides that he's going to make this cross-country journey with, he's got an ex-wife or separated from his wife. I can't remember, but and he's got a strained relationship with his son. And it's just this very charming story about reconciling all this stuff, all while running this crazy food truck.
And Jon Favreau was such a joy to watch in this movie. As you said, he's one of those really lovable actors, and the way he just morphed into this role, you can't help but root for him.
Yeah. I mean, he's always so charming, so likable. They've actually turned chef into, there's a Netflix show that Jon Favreau hosts where he doesn't literally drive the food truck around, but he goes from restaurant to restaurant and cooks stuff with real restaurant owners.
How fun.
And he has different celebrity friends of his tag along.
Of course he does. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he'll, so I've watched a couple of episodes of that too, and they just have fun and cook crazy stuff. But anyway, the movie Chef is well worth watching.
I completely agree. So this next movie, I just adore this movie. I love the concept. I love the storyline. I mean, it's not really original, but 100-Foot Journey from 2014 with Helen Mirren. Oh, what a lovely movie.
I have to say, of all the movies on this list, if I were to recommend one to people who want to watch a movie about food, it's the 100-Foot Journey. It is about an Indian family who flees Mumbai in the wake of some political
revolution.
And their restaurant's destroyed, and the mother of the family is killed, and they seek asylum in Europe, and their van breaks down.
Wandering across Europe.
Yes, and they're trying to find a home. And their van breaks down in this tiny French town, and the father is immediately struck when a young woman offers to help them and brings them to her home and feeds them. The father all of a sudden is looking around like, oh, there's fresh seafood and all the great ingredients, and he decides he's going to buy this little abandoned restaurant in this village that happens to be across the street.
Across the street.
The restaurant across the street. That should be the theme. So it happens to be across the street from this Michelin star restaurant
called Le Sol Pleur, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Which translates to the Weeping Willow.
Yes, and it's run by Madame Mallory, which is Helen Mirren.
Exactly. And so what initially starts out as, a rivalry is it's just this kind of nobody Indian restaurant, and Helen Mirren's kind of disgusted by it, that she has this well-regarded French restaurant, and then all of a sudden things start to change as the father of the family, there's an incident that sort of triggers everything. And then this kind of reluctant friendship forms between the two, and Helen Mirren takes on the restaurant owner's son as her protege.
Yeah.
And he turns out to be this very talented chef. And so it's just a very charming story. The acting's incredible. Every moment of that film is just a pleasure to watch.
Oh, I completely agree. And also, some of the stars is Om Puri, who is an Indian movie star, and he plays Papa. and Manish Dayal, who plays Hassan,
The son.
the rising chef.
Right.
And I just always remember the line from that movie. It sounds so trite, but it's so true. And that is, food is memories. And, you know, talk about all the food from your childhood. And if you haven't had it in a while, and then years later, you whiff the aroma of it, you have a taste of it, and it really brings back a lot. Do you remember, okay, pop quiz, Debbie, the 5 French mother sauces that is so central to this movie?
I know.
I mean, they're so obsessed with the Michelin star, but you know, they talk at length about these 5 mother sauces that you're supposed to master to even have a shot of having a Michelin star.
Yes. And I am going to like bag off of this question because I know that the 2 or 3 of them are so similar that I couldn't even believe that it's, you know, hollandaise and
bechamel. There's veloute, which is I believe it's a brown sauce, and then espagnole and tomate, which is tomato sauce.
well,
So yeah, I've only made 3 of the 5. I don't even know what the other 2 are.
the orange cheese that I'm squeezing on my noodles later tonight does not qualify as one of the mother sauces. It's one of the bastard child sauces.
Okay, so from France, we move on to Italy, where our next movie is set, The Trip to Italy from 2014.
And this is Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon, and I literally am laughing just sort of remembering the movie because it starts off, and this movie has spawned sequels and a television show.
I'm totally missing out on this because I haven't seen this movie.
Steve Coogan plays a writer for The Observer, and they are paying him to take a tour of Northern England and visit 10 restaurants and review them. And his girlfriend breaks up with him, and none of his friends will go with him. So he calls his old friend and says, hey, do you want to go on this car trip? No one else will go with me. And this guy says, sure. And these two, all they do is drive and eat and talk the entire time, and you are never bored for a moment. They do impersonations throughout the movie and kind of argue and debate about what's wrong with it or what would make it better. And I mean, if you like that kind of thing, this just sort of witty, British, quick banter, it's absolutely the best 90 minutes you'll ever spend. They have this scene when they're at lunch and they're fighting over Michael Caine's accent, and they're both doing the accent while they're arguing. It's priceless. It's such a great film.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
And I love Steve Coogan. I'm not familiar with Roby Brydon, but I love Steve Coogan. So that's going to be on my list.
Definitely worth it. I mean, so funny and fun.
All right. So last but not least is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Of course, the original 1971 version with Gene Wilder. Debbie, my God, this movie.
Who, I mean, should have won an Oscar for that role, without question in my mind. That was one of the big fumbles of the Academy, in my opinion. It's timeless, that movie. I mean, the remake, I think, was sort of a scar on, I thought it backfired.
It was a bit strange.
And I mean, Gene Wilder takes strange to a whole new level, but it's such a wonderful, creative, fabulous, entertaining strange. And the movie can be a little scary if you've got little kids. I mean, when I put it on my list, my youngest son, who's a freshman in college, was like, that that boat scene was so scary. So, you know, for people who may not know, little kids, it might be a little much because visually it's so avant-garde. But
I was going to say that boat scene, a little bit of trivia, and your son is right. Gene Wilder was so convincing in that scene that he truly scared some of the child actors in that scene with him because they couldn't tell whether he had really gone crazy at that
Yeah,
moment. Maybe he did,
yeah,
but that just goes to show
yeah.
what a great job he did with this role.
And all the each character, each child with his or her own vice, and the and Gene Wilder just managing the whole thing with his talent is just it, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, he was like the conductor for
Yeah,
the entire thing with the ensemble, with the kids and everything. So, did you know that all 6 members of Monty Python was interested in the Willy Wonka role?
I did not.
Yes, that really surprised me, but apparently they were, and also the producers also considered at the time Fred Astaire and Joel Grey, among others, for the role. And I just can't think of this role without Gene Wilder. But, you
It's
know,
same with me. I mean, he was so magical and so perfect. And while you think, wow, Joel Grey, when you like, I immediately think of Cabaret when I think of Joel Grey. But you think, wow, that he would have been amazing, or Fred Astaire with his dancing would have been amazing. But Gene Wilder he's just the definition of Willy Wonka in my mind.
yeah, I mean, he was just magical. I mean, the whole thing, the whole appearance, everything, everything, everything. All right, so that is our list for the day. We hope that you had a satisfyingly tasty episode as we did. But of course, we're not going to end the show without dessert, which is part of a great meal, right, Deb?
I've been
So,
waiting for dessert.
so in honor of Willy Wonka's chocolate, and also in honor of Remy from Ratatouille and Madame Mallory from the 105th Journey, we're going to have this unbelievably yummy, easy to make concoction, and it's avocado chocolate truffles. You heard me right. The secret ingredient is avocado, but it's when you look at it, it's just a chocolate truffle. The ingredients, as always, are very pantry friendly. We've got chocolate chips that you just melt out, and sugar and all that good stuff. And again, you've got mashed avocados. I mean, if you think about the texture of an
That's what I was
avocado,
thinking. They're so
it's
glossy.
rich and creamy.
Yeah.
And so all of that really enhances the texture of this truffle. So when you bite into it, you're going to get that rich, fudgy consistency. And it is just heaven. If I recall, I don't even think you taste the avocado because it's so chocolatey.
Yeah.
Say magnifique, as Remy would say. So, Deb, do not forget those avocados at the grocery store.
I've already got my champagne mangoes for the mango pie, the
Yay!
mango tiramisu. So I'm really excited. So
Exactly.
my stop is avocados.
All right. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week for another episode of the SIP series on the Stir. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.